Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last session of the third day, but not only the last session of the third day, but the last session of the conference. I'm very excited to introduce my dear colleague, Adrienne Oliver, who is a part of Peralta Online Equity Team, and also who is part of Peralta Community College as an English faculty member. And we are going to listen to her as she talks about leveraging joy to sustain student success. But before that, I would like to remind you that you can turn on Zoom caption feature by clicking on the bottom button at the bottom of your screen. And you can turn it on and off as you wish. And also, if you have any questions for our presenters, feel free to share your questions in the chat, and we're going to direct them to our presenter at the very end of the session. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm going to share the link in the chat so that you can watch the videos, watch the sessions you missed in this conference and in the previous year's sessions. So, Adrienne, if you're ready,
Ready.
take it
Thank
over.
you, Adrienne. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here for this last session. I know some of you have been here since the morning and yesterday. And so we thought it would be nice to close with a little joy as a reward for all of your hard work of attending our conference this year. So I'm actually going to start with a little imaginative exercise. And so where you are, if you will just get comfortable, and you can close your eyes if you feel up to it, or just do a soft gaze. And take a few deep breaths. Gonna get centered in the moment. I have the beach background. If you want to just look at that, you can imagine you're at a beach, relaxing. And let's imagine that joy is the central technology driving our equity efforts. Let's imagine that we substitute the word joy everywhere the word equity shows up in our program. And then we will find ourselves at the Peralta Online Joy Conference. How does that change our perception of the work we're doing here today and the work that we've been doing over the past few days? Imagine that all of our DEI efforts became our JOY efforts. Can you imagine how the educational equity landscape would change if our offices of diversity, equity, and inclusion became offices of dreams, joy, and imagination? And towards that aim today, I'm offering us a few minutes. We have about 30 minutes left to imagine what it would mean for that spark of joy we get from our everyday lives to infuse what we're doing in the classrooms. And it's even more important for us to do that in the online classroom space, where our students can seem kind of far away because we can't necessarily see them in front of us in this, three-dimensional space. And I want to offer that it's even more important for us to imagine them being close to us and centering them and inviting them into our joy. And so now we'll pause our imagining. You can open your eyes if you had closed them. And before I jump into the meat of just the part of the presentation, I want to dedicate our efforts here today to the labor movement in honor of International Workers' Day. Happy International Workers' Day. For so long, we fought the long, hard battle of trying to preserve our joy so that we live balanced and holistically healthy lives that leave us time to spend time with our families at the end of a hard day's work. And I just have to say that as an online educator, I've been teaching in the distance education space for over a decade, closer to 20 years. And so I've learned the hard way that it's so tempting for you to self-impose a 20-hour workday on yourself. You're sitting at your computer, designing curriculum, grading, responding to forums. It could be endless. So it's even more important for us to learn how to set boundaries around how we're working in honor of International workers' day and that battle we fought to have full, balanced lives. So that's my spill on that. I'll get off my soapbox. But that's what this leveraging joy is all about, because the more we can protect that space for joy, the more we can bring that into the classroom and help that learning experience be joyful for students. And I know as educators, I often will say, well, my work brings me joy. Like my vocation, that is what brings me joy. And then I would challenge us to think about how our bodies are responding to long hours of sitting, for example, or our eyes looking at a computer screen, where we're probably not using that blue light screen filter we need to be using. How many people have your blue light screen or the protector over your screen? I have on my glasses today because I am going to be doing a lot of grading after this, and they have the blue light filter in them. But I said all that to say that we want to think about what we do beyond our vocation as educators, something that's beyond the computer screen that we can bring into our work. And so that's really the secret sauce. So let me jump into my presentation. We had that introduction, we're leveraging joy. I'm going to start by giving some examples from my own life, and then the bulk of the rest of our time together will be you reflecting on what you do in the three-dimensional space beyond the computer that you can leverage as a source of joy in your teaching. And so for me, I'm a writer. I've been at Peralta since 2013. I've been writing poetry for years before Peralta. And since my time at Peralta, working with my students, I've been able to just share my love for the written word with students. And that's really deep in my own practice, being able to help them share their stories. And my framework, just to be, give you all the information I can in our time together. These are some books to probably check out if you're more interested in bringing joy into the spaces that we teach. The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, if you haven't read it, is an awesome tool for thinking about problem posing education and bringing students into the center of what we do. And then The Art of Critical Pedagogy is a theory for involving students in research, which I really love, like from day one, inviting students into the world of research. And then I'm inspired by Teaching to Transgress, Education is the Practice of Freedom, which also suggests that teaching is an act of love. And so I'm operating from this informed awareness of the oppressive history of academia and engage in this reflection and practice constantly so that we can create the classroom, the academy, as a space of joy. So examples from my own life, and I call this DJing my life, because when I think about a DJ at a party, that's the role of the DJ, is to get us moving, right? To get our limbs moving. And that's what we are doing here today, is reflecting on something we do that gets us moving. And for me, I love to dance. This was to me a bad attempt at trying to learn how to break dance, but still I'm doing something that's getting my body moving. This is a picture from a self-care conference, a picture from a poetry reading, doing work out in the world, going to museums, and all of this. I'll talk about how this informs my teaching and how I leverage this in the class to hopefully give you some ideas about how you can do this in your own classroom. And this is when we had a poetry reading in one of my creative writing classes at Laney. So next, I have a space for you to dream, a space for you to reflect on something you do outside of your teaching that brings you joy. And so I'm gonna have you go to this website. You can scan this QR code, or you can click this link. I think we have it in the chat. Let me see if I can copy it and put it in there. And since we have a pretty small group, we'll have time to hear from everybody, how you're inspired from this presentation to leverage joy. I'm actually going to stop sharing for a minute and go over to the Padlet so I can share that. And so you'll see when you get there that I did this presentation actually for a speaker series that we are doing within Peralta on the same topic. So you can already see some examples of what people have put as sources of joy. And you can follow the numbers here. Like I have one, choose an interest that can serve as a tool for bringing your most authentic and joyful self to the classroom and to your relationships between you and your colleagues as well. What do you like to do for fun? And then move over to number 2, what hobby or personal interest can you use as a tool to help challenge traditional notions of pedagogy and or canonized text? And then 3, what 3 adjectives describe who you are and what you value? And you have lots, again, you have lots of examples there from the presentation a few months ago. And then 4, after completing questions 1 through 3, write a sentence or 2 that details how you'll use your hobbies to create an assignment. And I think this is going to be even more important in this age of AI. I was sitting in on the last presentation where the speaker offered that maybe we start to redesign every assignment so that it's less susceptible for folks to be able to use AI, and infusing your hobbies and interests and personal values may be one step towards doing that revision. So I'm going to stop talking for 5 minutes and give you a chance to just add to the Padlet. But before we do that, I want to just pose a question of anybody have any thoughts right away that come to mind of a hobby that brings you joy? Let's see, who's here? What about Barbara, one of my colleagues? Are you there?
Sorry.
What's a hobby that brings you joy? Just
The outdoors, camping and hiking, especially.
camping and hiking? Awesome. Anybody else want to pitch in? What about Beth Taylor Shops? I think that's how you pronounce your name. I'm not sure.
That is how you pronounce my name.
Oh, yay!
I love doing English country dancing.
Ooh, that's fun. That gets your limbs moving, I'm sure.
It does.
Thank you, Beth. What about Dr. Samuel Morgan? Wait, Samuel Morgan Reedley, I think. Something that brings you joy. What about Eva? I don't know if Dr. Samuel is here. Something that brings you joy.
I added playing with my daughter, catching up with friends, and alone time.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yes, and you do, thank you for adding that. You just click that blue plus in the lower right and you can add to it. And now I want to give you 5 minutes of time to reflect and come to gradually work to number 4, where you have that statement of like, this is how I'm gonna use, was it English country line dancing, Beth? This is how I'm gonna imagine that I could use line dancing in my classes as some type of assignment. Actually gonna start a timer. So we'll have 5 minutes starting now. That's perfect. It's 3:15, so until about 3:20. And we'll take just about 1 more minute of reflection time. Okay, let's see what we have today. I'm going to just reshare my screen with the Padlet, and then I'm going to share with you how that translates to creating and redesigning our assignments. And maybe someone can speak to, their specific discipline, and we can talk about what that would look like to use your hobby in an assignment. Let's see, today we have music, dance, viewing art, film, making videos, storytelling, photography and graphic design. Let's see. I like to take students outside to have them notice the details in their environment and then write about their perceptions, feelings, and physical responses. That's awesome. And what else was today? I have my students draw a picture of themselves and share 3 things that they would like to share. I show them my kindergarten self-portrait to get them started. That's cute. Hanging out with friends, playing with my daughter, my imagination, the outdoors, playing, river rafting. Okay, let's get back to the last one. Just looking for today. So some of the values in this group: outgoing, creative, warm, humor and silliness, inquisitive nature, emotional, friendly, creative. These are all awesome starting points for infusing our curriculum with joy. I'm going to share my own examples, and then I want to help someone craft. We only have time for 1 or 2 people maybe to craft an assignment using something you put in the Padlet. Then what would that look like as an assignment? So I'm going to reshare. And so these are some more joy projects for me. I shared that I'm a writer. And so I've created these things in the community that also inform my English class assignments. I've published a few books with different presses, contributed to anthologies. These are things that are outside of the teaching realm. Within Peralta, as Adrienne mentioned, I'm a part of the online equity team, and I've also created an equitable teaching repository. Believe it or not, I see that as a form of joy. In my mind, like I shared with you earlier, I just replaced equity with the word joy. So it's a joy teaching repository, because if everybody feels included in the work that we're doing and we're sharing our passion with them, then it does become a space of joy. And I also have a project, Black Ghost Storytellers, that I curate and teach people in the community how to tell family stories. And so what that looks like in the classroom, considering I love storytelling and writing and going to poetry readings, is helping my students tell their own stories. And so oftentimes I have them share migration stories, and this is a blog space that I created for them, so that kind of relates to me thinking, how can I, because it's a composition class, mind you, they're still learning thesis statements, research, and all of those things. I'm infusing my passion for storytelling even into that very, academic space. And so one thing I have them researching this semester, I have 2 sections of English 1A, which is our essentially Comp 1 class, is I have them researching self-care or community care, which they often find is just both of them kind of feed each other. And remember that slide a couple of slides back where you saw a picture of me going to a self-care conference. So since this is something that I'm really passionate about, that's one way that I share my own journey with self-care with my students, my own journey with community care through that. Think back to the previous slide of the community storytelling project that I lead, having them think about community care. And this oftentimes students will say that this was, they're surprised that in an academic space that they're able to do this type of work. And some students, especially, I was going back to those migration stories, especially my Black and Brown students haven't had that space to think about their own self-care or to think about how we can care for our communities. And so I help them, again, going back to that other side, what I mentioned, critical pedagogy, or inviting students in as researchers in your classroom. I have them pose questions, critical questions about self-care, open-ended research questions that help them think about how they can begin to research these concepts. And so I think about, for instance, some of the things you guys named around like hiking or dance, what it would look like if some of your prompts were centered around some of those things, because then you can bring in like your own expertise and they can kind of sense your passion for those things. And so I want to go to, before we go to that final slide, back here, and have a couple of volunteers share something you wrote, and let's brainstorm together about how that could become an assignment in your class in our last 20 minutes together. Because my next question would be, what discipline are you teaching within? Who mentioned the outdoors?
That was me.
Ah, I love, and you teach an ESOL, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so what's an assignment? You may have already thought about this, a way that you can incorporate the outdoors into your current assignment.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking, it's kind of hard to get students outdoors, but we do have the garden out there in the
Mhm.
back, and I am back in the classroom 4 days a week. And I teach one online class, but I can always ask students to go outside and, as an assignment and
Yeah.
experience the outdoors, bringing, whatever they have outside of them into the online class.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, the thing about the outdoors, like some people who aren't used to going outdoors, don't always get it, like what's the appeal, but there is a very spiritual side that I think is accessible to most people.
Yeah.
If you can kind of if you're not used to noticing details, if you can be coached
Yeah.
to noticing the details, and then kind of go internally to see how your body reacts to the wind, on your face, or
Mhm.
the butterfly that you happen to see flying by, and to try and tune into how your body responds to that, how your senses respond to that, to pay more attention to those kind of bodily reactions when you're outside.
I love that
And
idea.
and I think that helps with writing skills too, in noticing details and giving details in your writing.
I love that idea, of course, as an English, because we always talk about including concrete sensory details in your narratives, and that's something that students really struggle with. And I think a tactile exercise like that, like you've mentioned, like even for the online students, asking them to go outside and feel the wind and try to describe what that feels like, or pick up a leaf or something and write about it, and going to that, back to that conversation about AI. I think that's an assignment that would be hard to put into Chat GPT.
Yeah, and I've asked students before to do homework assignments, and to go outside first, to notice these things. Some students are very, very reluctant because of the neighborhoods that they live in to go outside. But I asked them to at least, sit by the window and look out.
Right. Yeah. That's a great idea. Thank you for that. So we did explore the outdoors. Who mentioned hanging out with friends? This would be a fun assignment to try to design. And what discipline are you in?
I mentioned that, Adrienne.
Oh, that was you? Oh, I'm a
Yeah.
moderator. And I know
Go
you're
ahead.
in ESOL as well.
Yes,
And
yes.
so how can we get an assignment that invites students to socialize?
Yeah, so one of the things that we can, I mean, as ESOL, of course, I'm talking about my field, but as people hang around, they go out and just maybe go to a restaurant or just like take the bus to meet with people. And for example, if you're teaching grammar, that might be nice to just ask them to, if they have phones with them. If not, they can just take a note. All the advertisement maybe on the bus and pay attention to grammar. Are they just like,
Mhm.
real life authentic text to the classroom context, and discuss the use of grammar in daily language? Are they correct?
Right.
How accurate it is, and maybe bringing that to, or similarly writing down some phrases or they hear in as they socialize with their friends and bring it back to classroom. So that might be,
I
making,
love that idea.
yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah. Have students go socialize and note the grammar. It reminds me of a creative writing exercise that one of my professors offered for us when I was, studying creative writing. She said, your homework is to just go out to eat and eavesdrop on the table next to you. And I felt so weird because I felt weird because I was like, if these people don't know, I'm like writing down their dialogue. And so that was the homework. I had to write down the dialogue of the conversation and then create a short story from that dialogue. And that was actually one of my favorite assignments, actually. So I could imagine for ESOL students, the homework being go home, socialize with your friends, and write down how they're using grammar. And let's come back and talk about it. And
Yeah.
yeah, let's see, what else? River rafting. Oh, that was the last one. And we have Eva, yours is similar, playing with my daughter, catching up with friends, alone time. What about alone time though? That might be something, an assignment, to get students to be reflective. I found that a lot of my students are on social media a lot. I actually had a conversation with a student during office hours, and we were talking about, because they're researching social media in another class. And she said, yeah, I'm going to try to limit my social media use to 4 hours a day. And I thought, limit? I was like, I'm only on there like 4 hours a week. Like, how much time? So that was like a limit for her. So I like your idea of like, let's use your passion for your alone time. How could we make that into an assignment for students? And this is for Eva Morales Figueroa.
I would have to think about that specific one. I added about incorporating photography and graphic design.
Oh,
Um,
photography. Okay.
I
Are you teaching? What discipline do you teach in?
um like I'm an instructional designer, so I support all faculty teaching all disciplines. Um, I have taught previously a tutor training class. So it was very much along the same lines of like teaching and learning. I was teaching and learning. And so I'm still training on teaching and learning. But I do an activity in one of our humanizing trainings about learning students' names. And we
Hmm.
do a share your name story activity. And so everyone tells us about their name, like how they got their name, if they like their name, how to pronounce it, how to spell it,
Mhm.
and people if like get their name wrong and how those types of questions that they can share. And
Yeah.
so I suggested maybe incorporating some imagery as they're sharing, and they could share a photo of themselves or an avatar or an image
Yeah.
that represents something about them. If they don't want to share a photo of themselves or they don't have something easily available. But that's just that's what I came up with on.
No, I love that idea. That's something you're doing now, having them bring a picture,
I have not done that, but that was just like how I
the
could
idea. Okay.
incorporate that. That was like one
I
way that I could think of. So
No, I love that. Actually, in our online equity class, we have a whole module on imagery and bias. And we put that in there. I forgot which module it was, but having that representation, having that image is like, one way we start to increase equity in our work. So I think
absolutely,
that's
yeah.
really important. Thank you for sharing. And you get to support some of our most important students. Well, all students are important, but other faculty, our colleagues, when we support, the learning that our colleagues are doing to better support students. Awesome. And then narrative inquiry. Who put narrative inquiry? That's like my jam. Wait, let's see how much time. Okay, we still have 10 more minutes. Narrative inquiry. Well, I'll just say a little bit about narrative inquiry and why I love it and how I've actually used it in my own classes. I'm not sure who in this group put that there.
Oh gosh, I did it, Adrienne. Sorry, I'm trying to
Oh, you did? Oh my gosh.
trying to put the link in the chat for the equity rubric because you were referring to some examples.
Oh, yes.
So I was just like multitasking.
No. Thank you. I can talk about narrative inquiry, but thank you for putting in the chat that link to the online equity rubric. We have a whole line for bias and imagery. So that's an important area of consideration. And so I'll say, you want to say something about narrative inquiry? You put it there.
Oh, please go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. And well, I was just saying that's really like the basis of my own research. I use narrative inquiry as the theoretical framework for my dissertation and interviewed some of our students to ask about their experience in English 1A and, just how their lived experience or their outside of classroom experience influences their attitude about learning to write. And so that was so informative for me, just hearing their stories. And then I just continue that work by having them tell their stories in my Comp 1 class. The narrative inquiry question is after they choose their research questions. Let me go back to this slide. So remember I showed you guys this assignment. Students, week 1, create your research questions. This is going to guide your research all semester. And then from there, they choose a question out of the 6 questions to research. And then I ask them to write a narrative about why they chose that question. And they're like, I don't know, I just chose this question. And so that really gives them a sense of like how their story also infuses like even what they're interested to write about. Even if they just chose a random topic, like why a random topic? Like why not choose something, that you're genuinely interested in? And I think that's one way we can get students excited about what we're trying to teach them, because if then we tap into something that impacts their real lives, then they're going to be like, oh, this is more than just, an ESOL class. This is like something real that I can use. Adrienne, would you add anything about narrative inquiry?
No, like similar to the assignment you shared about migration stories. I think that was another slide that you had. Yes, this one. So migration stories, I think mine is a little bit similar to this one because all my students are either refugee or immigrant. They are new to this country, so they all have stories. But I also would like to share just quick note. I am a little bit hesitant. I used to do that in the past, but now I'm a little bit hesitant because I realized some students don't want to go to those stories, go back to those stories.
Mhm.
I think there's some traumatic effect on them.
Yeah.
And I felt so terrible not thinking about this point, but I
Mhm.
also think that, you know, that happened if like just like minority, like maybe 2 or 3 times it happened.
Yeah.
But still, it's, you know, I just felt like I don't know how to deal with trauma. I don't know how.
Right.
So that made me a little bit, you know, so I kind of like made it optional. Like it became one of the options that they can.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was something I learned. I always learn from my students, and that was one.
No, me too. And that's why I kind of migrated to this,
Yes, yes, yes.
because the trauma came up and trying to tell those stories.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
And, I remember one student, she was gonna, for this migration stories, era that I was in, she was gonna interview her mom about her migration story, but it was so painful, and um, she wanted to protect her identity. She was really worried about sharing her mother's story. And so in that instance, it really calls upon us to just tap into how we can bring in that care. Going back to one of the books I recommend that we read is Teaching to Transgress by Bell Hooks. Really all Bell Hooks, all about love, and these books that center how can teaching be a space to share, love and care. And that just really has informed so much of my work, like giving them that space to grieve, not being able to tell that story, or giving them an option that if this is too painful, then how about you interview a classmate? Because like you said, we have so many like migrant students in our classes. You could interview a classmate about their migration story if it's too painful to interview someone in your family. And so I found that the question of community care and self-care really has given them a space to explore that safely and without me feeling like I have to be a therapist, because I don't want to further like harm them, And so we just kind of hold space for them to research best practices. And of course, I refer them to services on campus if, something comes up in this research that helps them to write about it in a way that's healing and joyous for them, so that they remember that classroom as a space that cultivated joy in their lives.
Adrienne, I like the way that you don't shy away from, because I've had the same experience as Deedham where I ask an innocent question and like this trauma will come up, in the classroom, but I like that you're creating a space too, that if stuff does come up, that the classroom can be an opportunity to bring, instead of saying, okay, I'm not going to ask that question anymore, like invite them to do it, but give them an option not to, but also at the same time creating the space for them to have a place to go if they
Right.
if they want to go there.
Yeah, exactly. And then they don't even realize that they're actually doing writing and research. That's what I love about it. Because then they're like, I have a student, I learned a lot from her. She took my English 1A class, and now she's in my English 5 class. When they sign up for the next class, I'm like, oh, I did something right. And I told her, I was like, I use your essay on self-care as an example now, with her permission. Because in her research, she taught me about how in the Southeast Asian culture, well, in her family, I won't say, I don't know, for the entirety of the Southeast Asian culture, but she said in her family, like mental health is like a shunned upon topic. Like they don't talk about therapy and all of that, that's like, and it reminded me a lot of the Black community. I hear like went through civil rights and all that. You don't need to go to a therapist. And it's like, but I'm Gen X, I do. No, but this student, she wrote about her family and what it was like being Southeast Asian, talking about self-care. And so in the process of writing that, or researching self-care, she was like, you know, this is something that I can offer to my family that hasn't been talked about. You know, I can begin to like change this narrative and offer some real joy to my family. And so it's just been very rewarding to just think about the classroom as a space where we can like bring our own interests and passions, share that with students and help them have a little joy in their educational experience. Because I guarantee in some of their other classes, there's probably nobody's considering joy. They're just trying to get through the curriculum. So with that, we're right at time. And I hope that that gave you some ideas to think about how, you know, we have a few more weeks left in the semester. Maybe you can redesign your final exam to make that be a joyous experience for your students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. It was really lovely and joyful to listen to you. And I would like to just say, I love the way you said Peralta Online Joy Conference. I love that. I love that. So thank you so much. And that was a great presentation that inspired us to just like, how can we integrate different types of assignments and reminding the self-care and joy to our students, because that's what we need. Everyone needs, but we always forget to do it, right? So thank you for reminding us that. And this actually finalizes our last day and also the overall conference. We have one closing session right after this one. And I'm not sure if you've been to Peralta Online Equity Conference before. What we do in the closing session is just have fun. So this is a great transition from Adrienne's presentation to our closing session. And basically we just informally chat. So feel free to stay over and you know, we're going to just talk, reflect on what we learned in 3 days and just chat informally. Kevin, do you want to say anything? Chelsea?
And we're open to feedback as well for what we can do better next year, any topics or presenters we should recruit. So by all means, we hope to have many voices in that closing session.
Yes. We're having a 10-minute break after that, before we go into close. Okay, sounds good.